Humans can live without sight, without sound, without taste, without smell, but one cannot live without touch. Touch is the key to everything.
Well, hello, everybody. Dr. Ron Oberstein, president of Life Chiropractic College West, and welcome to our leadership line. Today, I have a guest who doesn't even need an introduction. I think everybody knows him. He's on the screen with me, Dr. Dan Murphy. Dan, welcome to the leadership line.
Thank you, Ron. Hello, everyone.
It's great to have you. Just a really brief, short thing on Dan. He lectures 53 weekends a year. We're still trying to figure out where that extra one comes from. He's all over the country. He's been doing this for 44 years. September, he jumps into his 44th year of practice. Dan graduated from Western States, immediately came down to California, got in touch with, or Jerry Klum got in touch with him. He ended up teaching at the school 35 plus years now. He's been at the college doing amazing things for our profession. Dan and I became very, very close friends, and he's just a wonderful human being. And today we're going to bring Dan on. We're going to talk, Dan, just about anything you want to, like what's the newest stuff for literature, newest stuff for research, because I know that you're diving into all of this stuff. So just, hey, Dan, I got to tell you, there's a few people in the world, and I think you know this, like when Robin Williams would get on Johnny Carson or on Jay Leno or on whatever, he could just go on, and the host would just kind of sit back and laugh. And Robin could carry. You're one of those people that could just carry the whole thing. So I'll jump in when I need to, but I just want to let you kind of just go and just share the information you have. But what's been some cool things that you've been seeing in the research lately?
My favorite thing is books. I'm a bookworm, and so I'm rarely without a book. Even when we go shopping at the mall, I'll have a book, and I'll just kind of keep up. My perfect scenario, one book a week. And I've been really close to that for these 44 years that I've been on the job. And I have really good recall. And I see some stuff that is just absolutely, I think, so relevant to the chiropractic profession. But it's a unique way of thinking about chiropractic and a unique way of thinking about what are these books actually saying? Like one of the books I think that truly changed me is a book that came out last August. It's called Dopamine Nation by a lady named Anna Lembke. Lembke is a physician who's in charge of Stanford Medical School of Addiction. So she's an addiction expert. And the title of her book is Dopamine Nation. And that's because what is addicting is a chemical called dopamine. Yeah. And that once they figure that out, neuroscientists figure that out, once you understand that dopamine is addictive, you realize you can exploit it because you can do almost anything to a person while imaging their brain and see, does it produce and release more or less dopamine? And they will rank things into it's how addictive it is. For example, we hear heroin. Well, that's really addictive. Not so much. Only 30% of the people do heroin get addicted to it. Yet 80% of people that smoke cigarettes get addicted to nicotine. Relevant, though, to our profession, other than the fact that that's just plain interesting stuff, what is really relevant is that if you look at the history of chiropractic, and for that matter, the history of osteopathy, it's centered around a chemical called norepinephrine. Norepinephrine is a chemical that has so many health applications, so many health implications, that it controls blood flow, it controls immunity. When we do class through the college, we go over classes on neuroimmunology, classes on just everything that has to do with norepinephrine and how norepinephrine is influenced mechanically. When we do what we do as chiropractors, mechanically based care, we influence norepinephrine. But here's the deal. Norepinephrine and dopamine is the chemical of addiction, are in the same family. Norepinephrine, the center of chiropractic and osteopathy forever, norepinephrine is made from dopamine. If you live in dopamine nation, if you raise dopamine, you are inadvertently raising norepinephrine. And it makes it difficult to get the miracles that we use because chiropractic is swimming upstream. I remember for me and you, because we shared part of this year together, 2019, that I did homecoming at Northwestern, and a chiropractor, all excited, comes up to me first break. He goes, Dan, I've had life-changing experience as a chiropractor. I go, please share. He gives me a story. 2 months later, I'm doing the convention in Lexington, Kentucky. A guy runs up to me all excited. He goes, Dan, life-changing experience as a chiropractor. I go, please share. He gives me a story. Then you and I and a few others together did a doubleheader in Jerusalem, Israel, and then London, England. Yeah. In that class, there was both classes, there's a chiropractor out of New York. And he comes, he goes, Dan, I've had life-changing experience as a chiropractor. Please share. All three chiropractors, one in Indianapolis, one in Minneapolis, and one out of New York, they give me the exact same story. And the story is, when they did a third world mission, they saw more miracles than decades of full-time clinical practice in the United States of America. How do you explain that? How do you explain that one of the chiropractors said they had 2 blind patients get their vision back in a week of doing third world, and they don't have x-rays, they're not doing full-on orthoneurals. They're just kind of seeing how's it moving and doing whatever they do. They get these miracles. And how do you explain that? Well, their third world is not dopamine nation. Our nation is dopamine nation. Yeah. Everything we do is to raise the dopamine. You're raising the norepinephrine. When you raise the norepinephrine shortens the telomeres. That's bad. So if you can dial it down, that's good. Norepinephrine is immunosuppressive. So if you can dial it back, you get immunological boost. And that has a lot of applications in this current COVID environment, et cetera. When you look at blood flow and how blood flow controls really everything, including the energy required to express our own genes, that is controlled by norepinephrine. So if norepinephrine is high, you get vasoconstriction. If a chiropractic adjustment will inhibit that norepinephrine, then you get better blood flow and you get better physiology everywhere in the body. So these are things that all chiropractors have observed in their clinical practices, but it's just kind of fun to see the science of it. I think that Lemke's book was really, really enlightening. And again, definitely not a standalone. If you read The Dopaminergic Mind and Human History and Evolution by Fred Previck, if you read Hacking of the American Mind by pediatric endocrinologist Robert Lustig out of UC San Francisco, he did a really good job. If you read The Molecule of More by Harvard's Daniel Lieberman, The Molecule of More is more dopamine. All of these stories are independent, but if you read them with a careful eye, you see they're all saying the same thing, and it's all influencing chiropractic. It influences what we do, the way we think, the way we practice, the way we look at people, the way we evaluate people, the way we manage people. All of it is kind of integrated.
Yeah. And when you look at where like most mission trips go to or service trips go to, right? You know, they go to third world countries, less computers, less technology. People aren't on their phones all day doing, all the different things that are raising dopamine. And all the next thing you know is that, you get someone who comes in the table and people say, oh, well, they're ready for healing. Well, they are ready for healing, but they're also in a truly different chemical state. And that's what you're saying.
Yeah, and you summed it up really nicely. And then the only other kind of part to that, I read what I think is one of the most remarkable things I've ever read. It's a book that came out last year called The Least of Us by a guy named Sam Quinones. And it is a book that is so eloquent and so compassionate. And it made me understand just what is really happening to our world right now. But there's a section in there that was so chiropractic, I fell off the chair. And it was a section that you and I have talked about this, that humans can live without sight, without sound, without taste, without smell, but one cannot live without touch. Touch is the key to everything. And that's because touch goes through the cerebellar relays. And as the neuro guys, because I know as you're talking about the neuroadvancement that Life Chiropractic College West is diving into right now, that there are more neurons in the cerebellum than in the rest of the body combined. And this is a part that is influenced by when we do what we do. Not only do we touch people when we treat them, but we actually change alignment that gets long-term changes into the cerebellar relays. And this is some of the most fascinating components of chiropractic, the fact that we have a job. I mean, it didn't take me too long to figure out that is we were talking about some of the original work from Renaissance back in the day in the 80s, that we start realizing that when people are in the office, often that is the absolute best time of their day, sometimes their week, sometimes their month, that they're in there and someone is listening to them. Someone is paying attention to them. Someone is checking them out, examining them, touching them, checking things, figuring out what's their problem, and then doing a mechanical intervention. And that mechanical intervention changes all sorts of physiology. And the fact that these mechanical consequences of what we do are the winner of last year's 2021 Nobel Prize is just over the top. If you look at that Nobel Prize on mechanoreceptors and position and movement and how that influences physiology, it's some of the greatest components of chiropractic that have always been somewhat controversial becoming absolute mainstream. So it's the most exciting time to be a chiropractor. Yeah. It truly is. And so I know you and I are both, we're about on the job about the same amount of time. We're at the same place. And it's just like our excitement level and our commitment level is just really, really over the top. I mean, I just can't, if there's any disappointment I have in my life is that I know that one day I will die, because I keep thinking, I got to go at least another 40 years. I mean, but that puts me, way up, I'm, well over 100.
You'll do it. You'll do it. Let's go back to the 70s, Dan, because, I don't know if you remember this, but, you just brought up Renaissance. We talked about that earlier. There was a book out called Touching by Ashley Montague. And I believe it was written in the 70s. And I came in contact with it in the 80s. And, it was so interesting that you talk about touching because, besides what we do in our profession, whether we're using an instrument, whatever, but we're still with somebody and the presence that's there and putting your hand on somebody, whatever it might be. But Ashley Montague talked about that when a baby is born, the first thing to do is to touch their whole entire body. The reason why it's so important to go through the birth canal is because all of the body, or at least the outside, gets touched, gets stimulated, right? Which is what we're talking about, right? Neurologically, having the cerebellum, having everything else start working, all the feelings and everything we get. And then Montague goes on to talk about that with newborn babies, they should be rubbed and touched and almost like massage, but not massage, just touch continually because of the sensation, the neurological sensation going in. This has been happening forever. And now we're able to equate the touching with the nervous system, with the cerebellum, with everything we're doing, along with reintegration of the nervous system, the autonomic system, and having our bodies function well. And people think chiropractic is for back pain. I'm going to fall off my chair. It's like so crazy,
Yeah. And it's not that we're not good with backs, because we are.
We're great. We're great.
But all of our eggs into that basket is almost somewhat insulting. Yeah.
It is. Well, talk to me about David Linden, because, we were talking earlier and, the stuff that Linden's doing right now, or at least what he wrote about, right? With touching and pleasure and things like that. Share some of that.
Well, even before doing him, just going back to the 70s, you might remember a book called Mutant Message from Down Under by a lady named Morgan. And she hung with the Australian Aboriginal people. Read that book again. People that have never read that book, because you talked about touching from the perspective of a newborn. That book talks about how these group of people that were incredible, how touching was a part of the daily ritual for everyone in the community. It was just what you did at the end of the day. You worked on everyone. You worked on their muscles, their necks, their joints. You just did it with this kind of thing. And I thought that is really some interesting stuff. When I read Sam Quinones' book, he talks about touch being essential. So you start looking into it, and you start to find this guy named Linden. He's a neuroscientist out of Johns Hopkins, and he wrote a book on touching. And you read that book and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is chiropractic 101 on steroids. And then once you read him, you start checking him out more. He wrote a prior book on pleasure, and you look at the not only the pleasurable aspects of touch, but you look at the physiological aspects of touch. And again, they tend to dovetail into our emotional centers and into the relays that control blood flow and also immunology. And so just if the more you get into chiropractic, when I just finished doing the wave with Left Chiropractic College West, and I'm going to introduce, I at the wave I introduced those references. They're part of my formal talk, and if anyone runs down and gets the formal talk that I did at the wave, they are so outstanding because they are non-chiropractors talking about the value of what we do chiropractically every day on every single patient contact.
Yeah. Yeah. So Dan, when you look and see the work that's happening right now neurologically, because, I know you're reading on this all the time, you see, how much we as chiropractors are affecting the brain and the nervous system, right? Without even, just by giving an adjustment and not necessarily knowing the in-depthness of what we're doing, because we're constantly, this is all being, discovered as we go further and further and further with research and Heidi Habbock's work and all this other stuff. Where do you see it going? Like just in your mind's eye, or even from the research you're reading, where do you see chiropractic, not as a profession, but the effects of what we're doing, and how do you see that exponentiating the human potential, if I could say that?
I think that there is unlimited potential for the chiropractic profession. Our problems have never been outcomes. Our problems have always been political economics. When you read the book from this year, 2022, Sickening by Abramson out of Harvard, he is absolutely insistent that the problem is we have turned healthcare over to pharmaceutical companies, and it's a scam. Their stuff doesn't work very well, with rare exceptions, but it's basically a scam, and how they protect themselves by giving $450,000 per elected official in Washington, D.C. They're the greatest political lobby group that has ever existed. The result is when chiropractic is doing what it does, it tends to fight biases within healthcare, and the biases tend to center around dollars. And I think that this is why I think it's really necessary for all chiropractors to join state and national associations, because they are our actual lobby group and they protect our rights from that perspective. In fact, a lot of times the attitude is, when a politician is they're getting rid of him, it's often because he would not or she would not play ball with the drug companies. And so the result is, and even in our own profession, we look at noise of large groups within our profession wanting to move chiropractic into pharmacology. And you start thinking, okay, that's kind of what osteopathy did. Now, osteopaths are, for the most part, allopathic providers. And chiropractic tends to resist that movement to pharmacology. So if you need that, we'll send you over there. But we want to continue to realize that mechanically based care can influence every system of physiology in a positive way. And the more you figure out how to deliver the care, how to examine, and how to look at the differences within people so that you custom up the approach to the individual, again, I think the potential is unlimited. I think that one of the greatest spots for unlimited potential that Left Chiropractic College West has easily tapped into is in athletics. Mm-hmm. We look at the chiropractor for the San Francisco Giants. We look at the chiropractor for the Oakland Athletics. We look at how every NFL team now has an official chiropractor, and that was in USA Today. We look at the outstanding performance of the rugby teams at Left Chiropractic College West, and as compared to to groups that don't have what the mechanical care that we give people. And then you look at just the history of chiropractic in sports and some of the things we've been able to do. I think that that's just a small slice of the potential But it's because it works so well. We have the athletes as allies, and the result is they really fight for us. They really do fight for the inclusion of chiropractic into their profession, so they can optimize their own performance and their health and their longevity and recover from their injuries, etc.
Yeah, I'll share with you a funny story. Mary and I took care of the San Diego Chargers for years, right? And they would come to us because we got asked by the team. This was back in the 90s. We got asked by the team to be the team chiropractors, and the players said, please don't. Like literally, this was back in the 90s. They said, please, because they wanted to be able to come to us and not have anything on their record, or, they were very protective about that. And they didn't want us. They wanted to make sure they can get the full care that we offered and be able to, and have that, right? And the interesting thing was that there was a gentleman who ended up leaving San Diego, and he played for the Buffalo Bills. His name is John Perella. Played for the Buffalo Bills, came to San Diego, and then he went to Oakland as one of the free agents when free agency first started, and he went to Oakland, got a really good package deal in Oakland. And I saw him. He found me at a seminar in Oakland. I was teaching, and he called me and said, can I come get adjusted at the hotel? I go, of course. And we got him a chiropractor in the Oakland area. And he said to me, he goes, yeah, I got to tell you something. This is really crazy. He said, he played for 10 or 11 years in San Diego. And when they sent the records over, the Raiders were turning in the Chargers to the NFL by saying they're withholding medical records. And John would say, he'd call the Chargers and say, please. And they said, we sent them. And the Raiders say, we didn't get them. And this went on for about nine weeks or so, or maybe 12 weeks, right? And it turns out that over those 10 years with the Chargers, John only had like 6 or 7 pieces of paper of medical records that got sent over, right? Which most athletes in the NFL have about 10 to 15 a year. So they were expecting 100 to 150, and they got 10, whatever it was. And I go, why? He looks at me and says, well, from the grace of God, and because you and Dr. Mary, all the care that I had, I've never needed any of the intervention, that they had. And it just shows you, it's nothing about me or Mary. It's really about when people are balanced and they're neurologically fit and they're functioning to the best of their ability. And these are people who are phenomenal athletes. They heal faster if there is injuries, and they function better, and they do all these kinds of things. And it's just so important. One thing we're doing at LifeWest, which is really cool, is we just did brain scans on every one of our world-class rugby players. And then they just finished their season 2 weeks ago, and now they're going to redo the brain scans and see where their brain optimization is, right? Because we know that's really what it's about, and having them function to the best of their ability neurologically. And this is one of the research projects that they're doing over there at the college to just be able to test that, right? And you'll see it because I'll get you this. And Wavi is the company that we're hooked in with, and they do phenomenal brain scans, and we have the helmets that work, and they can read everything. It's amazing. And when you get someone and you adjust them and you can actually watch things light up, I mean, it's just freaking incredible to see how we're truly affecting the nervous system, right?
Your story was a great story, by the way. Thank you for that story. That was a really good football story. I like that.
I know you love football. I know you love the Raiders.
The guy just didn't have very many records, so they thought they were holding out only because he's been healthy.
Didn't have it. But it goes to your point, and I want to circle back to one thing before we close up today. And that's the dopamine, because when we start talking, I know chiropractors, and I think it's phenomenal. They say when you come in our office, this is a cell-free zone. This is a whatever it might be, right? Where they try to get people unplugged, right? And I'm not saying that their dopamine is just going to drop to the floor, but it's kind of like, I think as individuals, we need to start learning that we need to get out in nature more. We need to balance. Technology is phenomenal. We couldn't do all the things we want to do without it. But what are we doing on the other side? Like, when do we unplug, and where do we go, and how do we get, where do we go to get our sanity and to be touched and to allow our dopamine regulation to kind of rebalance itself, I don't know, Dan. It's like something that I think that we as human beings, as a species, have to look at,
No, I agree. And there's another whole loop to that. And remember, I think that Lustig did it best, and that is when dopamine goes up, serotonin goes down. And when serotonin goes down, then you get people that are anxious and depressed. But they've known since 1996, November, when Bill Vicentino published a study in the journal Pain, that when you get adjusted, you initiate a neurological sequence of events that inhibits nociception, but it does it by going up to the brain and coming back down. They call it the suprasegmental descending pain inhibitory pathway, but it uses as one of its neurotransmitters serotonin, so that when dopamine goes up, serotonin goes down, and not only get anxiety and depression, you also get chronic pain. And if you read Judy Foreman's book, A Nation in Pain, she says, of the 238 million adults in our country, roughly 116 million have chronic pain. And that's because we have these neurochemical imbalances. And one of the greatest things that chiropractic can do, even just chiropractic alone, helps to rebalance that. But you're right, there are other things to do. So we go over these entire meditation protocols that we have people do. You're obviously not in California right now, you're in Montana. We have our spot. Michelle's at her lake cabin right now for her. We have our farm out here in Northern California. My brother's out there working it right now. And then we go out there, and that's kind of, we all, do that stuff, and then exercise and excuse me, everything else that we do. And we're careful on our diets. We intermittent fast. We do our sleep hygiene.
Hanging with your grandkids, just doing these things. And I think it's just important for our audience to know that, as plugged in as we can get, and I'm not against it because I think it's cool. All the literature, everything you can pull off, we've got to balance that with being unplugged also,
Yeah. That's chapter 4 in Lemke's book. Chapter 4, Dopamine Nation, chapter 4, came out last August. You read that, it's exactly what you said. You've got to unplug for a bit. Yeah, she calls it a dopamine fast. Chapter 4.
I love it. I love it. I'm going to tell Mary that today. I'm going on a dopamine fast.
But I want the audience to hear this, though, and you too, and Mary too. There are parts of Lemke's book that are so over the top. I wish I could unread them. I go, people are more messed up than we can ever imagine. And so I wouldn't let my daughters, or because I know you have daughters too, or Michelle read certain parts of that book. I go, whoa, it's not. But the message is very clear. And that is, we're imbalanced. And part of what we do is we actually activate the other side of the balance in a good way. That's why I believe in my heart, everyone should be under maintenance chiropractic care. We need a lot more chiropractic.
Absolutely. And when we start getting that message out, right, about rebalancing and pulling in, it's the greatest thing that we could possibly give to anybody, right, is the opportunity to have their nervous systems function well. Dan, first of all, it goes without saying, I love you and I appreciate you and I appreciate all you're doing for chiropractic, everything you're doing, and Michelle also, because I think I know that everything Michelle is doing is just there's got to be somebody who's making sure everything's moving in the right direction and unsubluxating the process, right?
The new quarter is coming right up, and I'm really excited about it. So.
I know you're jumping right in. I'm excited about it also. So, anyways, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for all you're doing for chiropractic, all you're doing for Life West, for all the times you're on the road, putting the mileage in so that people can hear your message, the message, of what the body is doing and listening to it from a vitalistic perspective and a chiropractic perspective. It's so important. And I will have you on the show every year so that we could, just get more and more updates on what's going on. And I just so appreciate you. And so thank you. Thank you for all that you do for the profession.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks for watching out for the college.
You got it. You got it. And to our audience, thank you. Thank you for being with us. The leadership line has now been in effect for, I want to say, close to 3 years. And it's just been an amazing hit. We drop these shows every other week. The opposite week, we do the Life by Life West, which myself and my wife do together. And so every week we're dropping something out to our chiropractic community, and it's reaching further and further. Over 4,000 hits, every week. So we thank you. Keep spreading this. Get this out. Send this to people that you know, colleagues or friends that you know that can, might need to hear this or might not need to hear it, but you want them to hear it. So we appreciate you spreading the word. We appreciate all that you're doing for the world to make it a healthier place, and mostly keep hugging and touching those around you so that you can keep stimulating the nervous system, and let's get those dopamine levels as low as we get balanced on those dopamine levels. So appreciate you so much. Until our next leadership line, Dr. Dan and I will bid you adieu, and stay safe and keep doing what you're doing. See you later.
Bye, everyone. Thank you, Ron.